Good Sunday morning. I'm News Center Maine's Don Kerrigan, sitting in for Pat Callahan this week, this Thanksgiving Day weekend, joined by Democratic analyst Ken Altshuler, Republican analyst Ray Richardson. Thank you guys both for being with us. Happy Thanksgiving. A little late to both of you. The news doesn't stop for a holiday. There's word of yet another new COVID variant discovered in South Africa. That caused the stock market to take a plunge. Ken, how worried should we be about this? And what does government do about it, if anything?
So I heard a report. I heard a doctor one time say that he believes that everybody in the world will eventually either will get COVID at some point, that this is not going away. It is not something that'll be eradicated like smallpox, that everybody will eventually get a variant. And one of the reasons to get vaccinated from his perspective was because it lessens the dangers from it. I think we're seeing these variants. The Delta variant, which was much worse than the original COVID. I mean, it was much worse. Spread faster. It was more serious. This new one, it sounds like it affects children more than the old one. So, I know people say that the science varies, but I think common sense says that whether you want to mandate it or not, masks, hand washing, social distancing, and vaccinations are really the only way to reduce. If they do reduce it, it's the only way to reduce the exposure to coronavirus. We're not going to eradicate it. I think we got to have a great campaign to just be smart like we do in flu season and treat this like a 365-day-a-year flu season. And government has to supply it. Government has to finance it. Government has to make sure everybody gets the vaccinations that want it, and that we have testing, and that we just keep vigilant. That's what we have to do.
Yeah, I saw this over the weekend with the variant out of South Africa. Great Britain and Israel took immediate steps and banned travel from that region of the world. Look, I agree with Ken on most of what he said, with the exception of the mandate. I'm not a mandate person, particularly in a free society like ours. Let's face it, good hygiene has saved us from a lot of things. But we have a problem with that in this country. We all know it. When you have to have a sign in the bathroom that says employees must wash hands before returning to work, in my mind, that's a problem. It's a sign that we don't practice good hygiene. Good hygiene, washing your hands. I use hand sanitizer before it was cool to do it like crazy. I'm a bit of a germaphobe, and don't just stand real close to people and breathe their air. You can have a conversation with somebody and not be 6 inches from them. So I think a lot of this will be common sense. We don't know how many people have actually had COVID in this country, because there's a lot of people that got it that were asymptomatic. So we may be closer to herd immunity than we actually realize. They're saying that potentially the South Africa strain the vaccine may not be as effective against it. I think we just need to be vigilant. It's like anything else. When you have a problem, the price of freedom is eternal vigilance. Let's face it. And this is the same thing here with COVID. We just need eternal vigilance, and eventually we'll find a way to live with it. I think Ken's right. We'll always have it. Some things we always have.
Two big murder trials garnered huge amounts of national attention. Kyle Rittenhouse found not guilty. The 3 men accused of chasing down and killing Ahmaud Arbery were found guilty. Talk about these two trials, Ray. Are these significant in terms of the culture we're in and how we view our justice system?
Yeah, I think it is. My wife, Dee Dee, and I were both riveted to these trials. Rittenhouse, I got into the Rittenhouse trial maybe about 10 days out. I watched Arbery pretty much the whole way. What it shows is justice is blind. I believe the Rittenhouse verdict was absolutely correct once the actual facts got out. As you know, the media in this country did a terrible job over Rittenhouse. The president called him a white supremacist. They said he carried a gun across state lines. They made up all kinds of stories, none of which were true. And when the actual video came out, it was clearly self-defense. It's funny to me, no one seems to care at all that grown men were beating on a boy. He was 17 at the time, but he looked like he was 14. When did it become in vogue for grown men to beat on a boy? And as far as Arbery goes, I found myself cheering when that verdict came out, because these guys are so obviously guilty and deserved the fate. They chose to kill this guy for sport. And I found myself cheering when that verdict came out. But I hope we listen to the words of Mr. Arbery, Ahmaud Arbery's father, because his words post-trial is what this country should live by.
Well, I'll start with the Arbery trial first. That was a very well-run trial. The judge handled it. I mean, even the defense attorneys complimented the prosecution and the judge on a well-run trial. And it was a lynching. It was nothing but a old-fashioned lynching. And for a jury of predominantly white people in Georgia to find him guilty, and the verdicts were completely appropriate. The one who shot him got the murder conviction. The other ones got lesser charges but found them guilty. So I agree. It was a very appropriate verdict, very black and white. And it was interesting that the defense team thought that the video showed that it was self-defense, where I think the video tanked the defense completely, but it's all in the eye of the beholder. I don't exactly agree with Ray and the Rittenhouse thing. I'm not suggesting that there wasn't an element of self-defense, but the problem was that Rittenhouse came to Wisconsin. He provoked the incident that created the self-defense, and there has to be a payment for that. It may not be murder, but you can't go from Illinois to Wisconsin. Can you imagine? I have to ask you this, Ray. You see Rittenhouse going through police lines to participate in this protest. Can you imagine a black man doing that? Do you think a black man would really have gotten past the police line and been involved in that protest? And I'm not saying that Rittenhouse was racist. I'm not getting in that debate. Here's what I'm going to say. I don't think we treat him as a hero, as I saw many conservative outlets do. When you kill two people, even in self-defense, you're not a hero. And it's a crime in some capacity. Maybe not murder, but the judge was too involved in it. The judge telegraphed his own views on it. And I think it was a badly run trial. The prosecutor calling him an active shooting was a bad strategy. He was not an active shooter. I don't think it was an act of racism. I think it was an act of negligence. And I think there should have been some penalty for that.
Main news this week, one of the big thing, the DEP suspended the license for the CMP corridor, the New England Clean Energy Connect, after they had already shut down, after Governor Mills asked the company to shut down to respect the referendum vote from a few weeks ago. What do we think of the politics of this, Ray?
Well, I mean, I think it's all crazy personally. And just for full disclosure, from the get-go, I've been a big supporter of the corridor. I think it's good for Maine's future. If we believe in clean, green, sustainable, renewable energy, this is that. It surprised me the environmentalists have fought it so much. I have a problem with them shutting it down right now. They did it voluntarily. I was a little surprised the DEP pulled the license after granting the license through an extensive review. I think all of this is going to hinge on Judge Michaela Murphy's decision about the use of land. When it goes to the law court, I think they'll overturn her decision and the project will go forward. This question that was on the ballot may not even be constitutional. And so again, that'll be another issue that's at the court. Ultimately,
well, that's what the December 15th hearing is about the request for an injunction to stop the law from taking effect.
Ultimately, I believe this corridor will be built, and when it's done and it's fully functional, I think Maine people will finally realize the actual benefits of this. I hope that's what happens. Maine cannot continue to say no to everything that comes down the pipe.
Ken, what's your take?
Well, I don't think the corridor is going to be built in my lifetime because I think it'll be in court for so long. It'll take that long to do it. I have a lot of mixed feelings. I did oppose the corridor. I actually agree with Bruce Polican. The problem with the corridor was it was a bad deal. I didn't oppose it on environmental grounds because I think the clear cutting, which is a term that was used incorrectly, was very minor. But it was not a great deal for the state of Maine. I don't think we made enough money from the deal. But that being said, I didn't really oppose it. It's amazing to me that the Department of Environmental Protection rescinded the license. What was the environmental difference that now makes the corridor not allowable? That has nothing to do with the environment. And as we know, people's referendums are not binding on anyone. And of course, I'm not a big fan of referendums anyway.
So as we go into the 2022 election for governor, we have both Janet Mills and Paul LePage supporting the corridor. Is this still going to be an issue in some form?
No, I don't think it's an issue because they both supported the corridor, and I don't think it's an issue. I think it's something that they both agreed to, and it kind of takes it off the table.
Speaking of 2022, Governor Mills and the legislature got some good news this past week with a revenue projection that we may have close to a 10% increase in revenues in the next fiscal year. That, of course, prompting Republicans to say, give it back to the taxpayers. The governor, in her statement, even hinted at that herself, although with no specifics. Ray, how much pressure will there be, given the situation we're in, to have some kind of a rebate or tax cut?
I mean, it depends on what Janet Mills believes the tea leaves read politically. She has no interest in doing it. This 285 that's coming back to some people who were working during the pandemic, she was not a big fan of it. It was very difficultly fought in the legislature. You got a very liberal Senate, you got a very liberal House, you got a very liberal governor. I think she wants to spend it on social programs. If Governor Mills was smart, and I do not believe from an economic standpoint she is, she would cut the income tax down to 5%. If we did that, it would make national news. It would tell people that Maine is serious about the fourth highest tax burden in the country.
And you're exactly right, Ray. The problem for Paul LePage is that she is flush with extra revenues and federal money. And that is great news for her and not great news for Paul LePage. And even if it's not anything she did, she gets credit for it. I am not a big fan of handing out checks because I don't think people necessarily save it or spend it in a way that helps the economy. I am a fan of the idea of lowering the income tax, right? I do agree with you. And lowering the sales tax as well. I think if you did that, it's a broad impact on everyone. I'd love to see her do it. Do I think she will? No. Do I think she's more likely to increase social services? Yes. Is she going to issue checks to everybody? Maybe, because that sounds good, but it's really not sound fiscal policy.
All right, let's go to winners and losers of the week. Ken, you first.
I think the Democrats nationally are the winners because, like it or not, the infrastructure bill passed and the House has passed the Build Back Better bill as well. I'm going to put a second winner in. I think Jared Golden. I give Jared Golden huge credit for being the only Democrat who voted against the Build Back Better bill. And he did it because there's about a $280 billion surplus to the wealthy in the United States. Now, whether you think that's good or not, Jared stood up for what he believed in against the face of the Democratic Party. He may have done that for political reasons, but I think it was a brave move on his part. I don't think it's going to pass, but I think it's something they can sell if Joe Biden can figure out a way to communicate success to people. He may take some lessons from Donald Trump, who was always able to do that, even when he didn't win. So that's a good thing. I think the loser of CMP, and we talked about this a few weeks ago, I think CMP has lost the PR battle a long time ago. And I'm not saying they deserve the bad rap, but they just come off as an evil utility. Exactly why when Ray said, we're going to have this proposal to take over, to nationalize utilities, which is an insane idea. That's going to gain huge momentum because CMP is such an evil utility to the Maine people. And they don't deserve it, but they've lost the PR battle. And that's really unfortunate because it's going to hurt the state of Maine.
Ray, your winners and losers.
So mine's kind of nuanced. My winner is the people of Maine because one of the few Republicans, I did support this infrastructure bill. I thought it was a failure of the Trump administration not to do it within 4 years. People keep saying, wait. There was a lot of pork in this, a lot of wasted money, there's no doubt, but we need to rebuild the infrastructure of the state and this country. I think we're getting $2.3 billion to do that, and we need to do it. So I think the people of Maine won there. I think the people of Maine also, and all people win. We are officially in the Christmas season. It's a joyous time of year. People are ready to be joyous, and I think we're seeing it everywhere. My loser is also the people of Maine, and that is because the corridor is shut down. I think there's long-term benefit. This town of Lewiston would have gotten a $250 million investment. We would have seen the electricity go down to the ISO New England grid, not to Massachusetts, as has been widely said, which then helps bring down the cost to all people. So I think the people of Maine have lost on this one, at least for the time being.
All right. Thank you both for your insights on all of this. Thanks for being with us. News Center Maine continues right after this.